So friends, welcome to Bethlehem. This evening we've tried to tell you the story of that city, the birthplace of the boy David, the shepherd who would become king. And then the words of the prophet Micah, who prophesied that from this town would come a new David, a Messiah, a new shepherd king who would rescue his people. Then, thanks to a Roman census called by Augustus, Mary and Joseph find themselves travelling south to Bethlehem, Joseph's hometown, to register. A Roman dictate unwittingly fulfills Micah's prophecy. And then there in Bethlehem, Mary's baby was born. Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. Bethlehem that first Christmas would have been heaving with the entire of the town's extended family coming back for the census. Every bed in town was taken. Aunts and uncles everywhere, packed in under the stairs and 3 high in the beds. Grandparents and cousins. Enter the innkeeper from the school play. We all know his line, don't we? Well, actually, there's normally 3 of them, isn't there, in a school play, because the teachers need to find a role for everyone. But it says, there is no room at the inn. The problem is that, like so many details of the traditional nativity play, that line really takes liberties with the text. The NRSV translates it as this: she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place in the guest room. No mention of inn. No mention of innkeeper. There were no travel lodges or premier inns in Jesus' day. And houses looked very different. A collection of buildings around a courtyard where the family and the livestock lived. Grandparents, parents, children, great aunts who may have been widowed, children who've been orphaned. Throw in some sheep and some chickens, a donkey if you're wealthy. They all lived around a shared courtyard. And Bethlehem is famous for its hospitality. So forget the innkeeper with his wagging finger with no room in the inn. But how about this woman speaking? Come on in. We can't have you out there in the cold. We'll find space for you somewhere. A house full of extended family, more due to the census. Every space is taken, and yet still they manage to find space. Somewhere warm and dry, with a makeshift cot, should the baby arrive while they're staying. I think my paraphrase might read like this: she gave birth to her firstborn, wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place in the guest room, but there's always room for more. Bethlehem is legendary for its hospitality. Bethlehem is big on Christmas. The whole city's income is largely dependent on Christmas celebrations that last all year round. But this year, for the first time in living memory, Bethlehem will be dark this Christmas. The town has decided not to put on its usual display of festive lights in Manger Square. How can they celebrate when so many in the region are grieving and in pain? So friends, this was Manger Square 2 days ago. No lights, no tree, no decorations. So as we think of Bethlehem this year, how should we respond? And the truth is, I don't really know. So I asked a friend who put me in touch with a Christian brother who lives in Bethlehem. Saeed Zaza works for the Holy Land Trust. He is a scholar and activist, a community artist, and a Palestinian Christian whose family have lived in Bethlehem for 800 years. He kindly sent us this message for our carol service. But before I play it, just a couple of things. Saeed is a Palestinian Christian working for peace and justice in the Holy Land. His is a Palestinian perspective. There are also many Israelis who are horrified by the violence in the region and are also working for peace and justice for all. And secondly, the original message was twice as long as the clip I'm going to play you. But I will post the whole clip on our Facebook page after this service if you'd like to watch it unabridged. So Saeed, your message to us from Bethlehem this year.
Good evening, everyone at Bessels Green Baptist Church. This is Saeed Zarzar speaking to you from Bethlehem's old city. And I work for a little organization, human rights organization called Holy Land Trust. And I live in the very oldest part of Bethlehem city. I am a native. And when we speak of the native Palestinians, we definitely speak of the Christian population of Palestine because we are the descendants of the very first Christians of the world. So we are the people who are still living and celebrating the gospel. So I live in Bethlehem's old city where my family has resided for the last 800 years. We try to be the voice of the voiceless, of the people who basically have many stories to share from this very sacred land, and their voices are not being heard by the media. There is a consensus in Bethlehem that there would be no Christmas celebrations whatsoever. So there would be no tree, no Christmas tree, no decorations, and no lighting. And this is the very first year that this event takes place. And this is the least we can show in an act of solidarity with our people in Gaza. My invitation to yourselves is to be mindful about your Christmas celebrations with every laughter, with every gathering you have. Remember and be reminded of the thousands and thousands of the Palestinian kids that have no shelter and that have no space to celebrate Christmas. For myself, as a Christian Palestinian, someone that lives the gospel in the land of the gospel, I feel that Christmas for me is not only about a prayer, but it is about prayers aligned with actions. So try to be the voice of the voiceless. And I thank you for giving me some time to just give you a very little update about how we, the first Christians of the world, are celebrating Christmas. It is time for you to stand with us. It is a crucial time to actually preserve the existence of the Christian population in the land where Christianity has arisen in Bethlehem. Thank you. I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and remind us in this Christmas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saeed, and happy Christmas to you and your family. So friends, as part of our service, we're going to do as Saeed asks. We're going to pause for just a moment and remember those who are struggling and those who are suffering. The picture on the screen is an image from the manger at the Lutheran Church of Bethlehem this year. Their nativity scene is called Christ in the Rubble. Let's pause for a moment to remember all who are hurting and all who are grieving. So just a couple more minutes of your time. What do you think of when you think of hospitality? Especially at Christmas. Do you think of a table crowded with friends and family? Nigella Lawson's perfect Christmas meal, oozing with brandy and cream. Let me offer you another picture. Let's call it divine hospitality, radical hospitality, or if you're a Christian here this evening, kingdom hospitality. And friends, it has nothing to do with pigs in blankets. You see, it's easy to throw a dinner party for friends or family, people like us, and there is nothing wrong with that. But radical divine hospitality goes beyond people who are like us to welcome and include the other, people who are not like us. And the seeds of this hospitality are found right in the beginning of the Christmas story. As both shepherds and kings, the wealthy and the poor are welcomed side by side to kneel and worship the infant Jesus. A Jesus who would grow up and welcome people who are not like him. Tax collectors, Matthew the tax collector in league with the Romans, skimming a little bit off the surface. The zealots who wanted to kill the tax collectors. That made for an interesting conversation over the dinner table, didn't it? Fishermen, prostitutes, those on the margins of society. When he told a story of a man mugged on a road, who does he make the saviour but a Samaritan, despised by many of his contemporaries? In this Christ child, we see the embodiment of divine hospitality. Later on, Paul would write these words about him. He is our peace. He has broken down the separation wall of hostility between us, that he might create a new humanity, making peace. He came and proclaimed peace to you who are far off, and peace to you, those who are near. So then you are no longer strangers, but you are fellow citizens and members of the household of God. I love that line, no longer strangers. So often we can feel a little afraid of anything or anybody who is different, whose religion, whose culture, whose traditions are different to ours. We fear people that are strange. We make them a stranger. Christmas calls us to fight against that fear, to not be afraid, to welcome all to gather around the Prince of Peace, no longer strange, no longer a stranger. If Jesus were born in Bethlehem today, he would be born behind a separation wall in an occupied territory, not that dissimilar to 2,000 years ago. But friends, we have to fight. We have to fight against that tribal nationalistic impulse that is everywhere at the moment. I love this Banksy stencil. Let's fight, but let's fight with love. Let's throw flower bombs of kindness at our enemies, reaching out to the other, whoever that may be to us. And just in closing, I want to recognize that this is not just trite wishful thinking. This is hard work. This is one of the images, many images of the late Desmond Tutu weeping openly as he listened to stories of pain and heartbreak from the Troubles in South Africa. Peace and justice requires truth. It requires forgiveness. It requires reconciliation. And that is hard work. It's not trite. It is not weak. If Jesus were born in Bethlehem today, he would be a Jew born in Palestine. He would be a bridge between both peoples, sharing something of both of their stories and both of their histories. The one they call the Prince of Peace would be emblematic of all that they hold in common. The child of God draws our attention to this truth, that we are all children of God. Every single one of us. Family, friend, stranger and enemy. All are made in the image of God. That is radical, divine hospitality. And it is the best hope we have for peace. And we need it now more than ever. So friends, this Christmas, what divides you? What divides us? How can you, how can I reach across the divides and bring peace and love at Christmas?